Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating movement happening across sub-Saharan Africa. It's a movement that's basically taking the traditional script on how we fix broken systems, specifically girls' education, and flipping it completely upside down. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to move from a massive global crisis to some incredible on-the-ground solutions. We'll hit the 100-year education gap, the leapfrogging solution, specific approaches to girls' education, health, safety, and allies, and finally, the 5 pillars of success. Section 1. The 100-year education gap. So to really appreciate the absolute brilliance of the solutions we're going to look at, we first have to confront the stark reality of the global education crisis. And honestly, it's a gap that's almost hard to wrap your head around until you look at the numbers. 100. That is a full century. Researchers have found that if we keep moving at our current traditional pace of just, incremental improvements, it'll take 100 years for the most marginalized children in the world to reach the learning levels that today's wealthiest students already enjoy. Just think about the gravity of that for a second. We're talking about entire generations essentially waiting in line just to catch up to where the privileged are right now. The traditional systems are just so backed up and under-resourced that playing by the old rules basically guarantees failure for millions. And the stakes here? They literally couldn't be more urgent. By the year 2030, a staggering 800 million youth globally might lack basic, essential skills. Now, it's really vital to clarify what we mean by a lack of education here, because the crisis isn't just about whether a child can physically walk into a concrete school building. Now, the crisis is about what happens, or actually what doesn't happen, once they sit down. We're talking about a massive systemic failure to provide quality learning. Millions of kids are missing out on crucial 21st century skills, things like critical thinking, complex communication, and creative problem solving. And when those skills are missing, entire communities get locked out of the modern economy. They don't have the tools to innovate locally, participate globally, or break those tough cycles of poverty. So access alone isn't the finish line. Honestly, it's barely the starting line. Moving on to Section 2, the leapfrogging solution. So if this traditional step-by-step approach is going to take a century, it's pretty glaringly obvious that simply building more of the exact same schools just isn't going to cut it. I mean, we can't wait 100 years, right? We need a major paradigm shift. Enter the concept of leapfrogging. By definition, leapfrogging means skipping over those slow, outdated systems entirely to jump straight to modern, highly effective approaches. It completely bypasses the baby steps. Instead of rote memorization, leapfrogging focuses immediately on teaching those adaptive 21st century skills we just talked about. It leverages technology to personalize the learning experience for the student, and crucially, it empowers local communities to help deliver that education, recognizing that, hey, the best solutions often come from the people closest to the problem. It's not about playing catch-up anymore, it's about forging a fundamentally faster and smarter path. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. Think of leapfrogging like a country trying to lay down a telephone network. On one side, you have the catching up mindset. This is like spending decades trying to lay down a massive grid of copper wires and heavy telephone poles to build a traditional landline network. Going step by step, mile by mile. It's super expensive, it's incredibly slow, and by the time you actually finish, the technology is already obsolete. But on the other side, you have leaping forward. Instead of building all that old infrastructure, many countries simply skipped landlines entirely and went directly to building mobile cell phone towers. They jumped straight to the modern solution, saving decades of time and billions of dollars in the process. That exact mindset, bypassing the obsolete to adopt the optimal, is what's being applied to education right now. Which brings us to a really fascinating question. Who's actually pulling this off out there in the real world? Well, Brookings researchers Elizabeth, Corrine, and Amy wanted to know exactly that. They set out to explore the global catalog of educational innovations to see who was putting this theory into practice. And what they found in sub-Saharan Africa was this vibrant, growing movement. They discovered an amazing array of organizations using highly creative leapfrogging strategies to break down the complex, localized barriers that keep girls out of school. These folks weren't just sitting around waiting for top-down policy changes from the government. They were actively engineering workarounds right there on the ground. That takes us to Section 3, Approaches to Girls' Education. Across sub-Saharan Africa, incredibly dedicated grassroots organizations are working tirelessly with the exact same goal, making sure girls have the opportunity to go to school, actually learn, and succeed. But they tackle this massive challenge in 2 distinct, really fascinating ways. Some take a highly direct route. This is direct intervention. Groups like SHCFO and the Messiah Girls Education Fund literally run the schools themselves, or they bypass the financial hurdles entirely by providing full, comprehensive sponsorships for girls, supporting them financially all the way from primary schools straight through college. On the flip side, groups like CamFed and REAP2 take a more systemic approach. They opt instead to strengthen existing government schools from the inside out. So, rather than building parallel systems, they train public school teachers, improve existing classroom resources, and build strong, resilient community support networks around local schools. It's two completely different operational methods, but they're united by a single powerful purpose. Section 4. Health, Safety, and Allies. Now, you might be wondering, is getting a girl enrolled in a classroom enough? Well, it's really only part of the equation. To truly succeed, these organizations realized early on that they have to extend their reach far beyond just academics to tackle holistic community needs. After all, a student can't focus on critical thinking or complex math if they don't feel physically safe or healthy, right? Take something as fundamental as menstrual hygiene. A lack of sanitary pads or basic health education routinely causes girls to miss a full week of school every single month, which eventually leads them to drop out entirely. Organizations like the Tabitha Cumey Foundation intervene precisely here. They provide that essential health education and physical supplies to keep girls in class. They also champion inclusion by providing learning materials translated into Braille for students with disabilities, ensuring absolutely no one is left behind. Meanwhile, groups like REAP2 directly merge health and education by establishing dedicated health corners right inside the schools. These are secure, confidential spaces where students can access counseling and vital information on safe relationships and reproductive health, effectively removing those silent barriers to learning. Now, what's really interesting about this next approach is how unexpected it is. It comes from the JISH initiative. When we think of advocating for girls' education, we usually picture female-led mentorship, right? But JISH is a program led entirely by young men and boys. They are actively stepping up to tackle the deeply entrenched cultural norms that halt a girl's education, issues like gender-based violence, early marriage, and transactional sex. They're promoting boys as vocal, visible advocates for girls' rights right within their own peer groups. It beautifully highlights a core reality of leapfrogging. Protecting a girl's right to an education isn't just a women's issue. It absolutely requires active male allyship. It requires transforming the mindset of the entire community so that the environment outside the school actively supports the learning happening inside it. And finally, Section 5, 5 Pillars of Success. So the crucial point is this. We've looked at that massive 100-year gap. We've explored the concept of leapfrogging, and we've seen the diverse, holistic ways these groups operate on the ground. When researchers zoomed out to look at all these varied approaches, they realized that these organizations succeed because they build on 5 universal pillars, creating a cohesive theory of change. They know that 1, you have to remove financial barriers first, because if a family can't afford the fees, the journey ends before it even begins. 2, that financial support means nothing if health and safety aren't addressed. A girl has to have a secure environment, free from health crises or violence, to actually focus. 3, these changes only stick if you engage communities and local leaders, ensuring the solutions are culturally relevant and championed from within. 4, only when those foundations are set can you truly focus on delivering high-quality life skills, empowering girls with the confidence to succeed far beyond the classroom walls. And 5, weaving through all of this is the absolute necessity to involve boys and men as partners, recognizing that true gender equality requires everyone pulling in the exact same direction. Improving girls' education, therefore, isn't just about unlocking a school door. It is about architecting a completely supportive ecosystem. Which leaves us with a final provocative question to reflect on. Is education just about opening classrooms, or is it really about transforming communities? When we look at the incredible progress being made across sub-Saharan Africa through the sheer power of leapfrogging, the answer is crystal clear. To leapfrog a century of inequality, we have to transform the entire ecosystem around the student. Every barrier removed, every boy engaged as an ally, and every health corner opened is a profound leap toward building lasting equality. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep looking for those faster, smarter paths.